The delivery. A thin manila envelope with her name misspelled. A hard drive labeled Project Malachi. A video of a pastor handing money to destroy a family. But by the time Evelyn understood what she'd found, she was already burning. 13 hours earlier, the gray Ohio sky had pressed down on her shoulders like a familiar weight. The boots hit the porch first. Mud-caked brown leather, worn thin at the heel. Evelyn's feet dragged across the gray-painted slats, exhausted from the route. Behind her, the heavy thud of the canvas courier bag dropped onto the wooden bench. The sound of it landing seemed to echo in the quiet street, a punctuation mark at the end of another anonymous day. She reached down. There it was, waiting by the door where FedEx had left it. A small, white-padded envelope. The kind that could hold anything. Documents, receipts, secrets that weren't meant for you. Inside the kitchen, her fingers worked the serrated steak knife along the envelope's seam. Plastic hissed as it split. She shook the envelope over the yellowed Formica table. The drive slid out, a sleek, matte black lacy, rugged casing catching the overhead light. Heavy, expensive, wrong. The label on it read, Project Malachi in white Dymo tape. She picked up the envelope again. Her thumb brushed the address label. The printed ink was slightly smudged, but legible. Evelyn Reed, 425 Sycamore Lane. She paused. Still. Breath held. Her own address was 425 Sycamore Scent. One letter difference. The kind of mistake that happens 1,000 times a day in the postal system. The kind of mistake that could destroy everything. Evening wrapped around her house like a dark hand. Evelyn sat in her home office, the silver Dell XPS glowing in front of her face. The room was otherwise black. Only the screen existed, a small island of light in an ocean of shadows. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She was running brute force light, the script her late husband had taught her years ago when he was still alive, still tinkering with circuit boards and security protocols in the basement. Green text scrolled rapidly across the screen. Password attempts, failed connections, failed attempts. The mechanical clicking of keys filled the room like a heartbeat. Rapid, insistent, desperate. Her jaw was clenched tight. She could feel the tension in her shoulders, the way her back had rounded forward, protecting something she didn't yet understand. Around her, the books on the shelves seemed to watch. Her husband's old technical manuals, her own paperbacks. A life lived mostly in solitude since he'd died. A folder popped open across the screen. Surveillance Mark O. She double-clicked. Her breath caught. The video window expanded to fill the entire display. Night vision-style footage. Grainy. The kind of quality that comes from a hidden camera. Dark park, bare trees, two figures meeting in the shadows. She leaned forward. Her breath was held now, caught somewhere in her chest. The second figure's hood fell back. It was Pastor Mark. Mark, who had buried her husband 3 years ago. Mark, who came to her house with casseroles and prayers. Mark, who knew everyone's secrets because everyone told them to him in the confessional, the office, the parking lot, after Sunday service. On the screen, Mark handed a thick brown envelope to the hooded figure. His mouth moved. The audio crackled and distorted through the laptop speakers, but she could hear it. His voice, cold and calculated, cutting through the night. This will destroy the Miller family's reputation, just as we planned. Evelyn's hand moved to her mouth. Her other hand remained frozen on the keyboard. She didn't move, didn't blink. She watched the timestamp on the video. OCT 12:02.14 a.m. 2 in the morning. A pastor. A conspiracy. Something that belonged in a different world entirely. She watched it again. Then again. Night and rain turned the alleyway behind the diner into a maze of shadows and water. Evelyn's shoulders slammed hard into the damp brick wall as she rounded the corner. The impact knocked the wind from her lungs. Rainwater splashed up from a puddle, soaking her boots. She held the courier bag tighter against her chest. The drive was inside. Her proof, her only leverage. The alley stretched ahead of her, dark and narrow. Her footsteps echoed on the wet asphalt, sharp, rhythmic splashes against the pavement. Behind her, she could hear other sounds. Breathing, movement. She'd come here to meet a source. Someone who could tell her what Project Malaki meant. Someone who could explain how a video like that had ended up on a hard drive addressed to her house. The yellow street lamp light reflected off the wet bricks, turning the alley into a tunnel of sickly light. That was when the shadow moved. A tall, hooded figure lunged from between two dumpsters. No warning, no sound until the last second. A gloved hand, black leather, wrapped around Evelyn's throat and slammed her back against the brick wall. The impact forced the air from her lungs. Her vision exploded into white spots. She tried to scream, but the gloved hand tightened. Pressure. Crushing pressure. Her eyes went wide. Her face was reddening, blood rushing to her head. She could taste copper. She kicked out. Her boot connected with the attacker's shin, a wet thwack of leather against bone. The grip didn't loosen. Her hand plunged into the courier bag. Her fingers wrapped around the heavy brass keychain on her belt. Old keys, a lucky charm, something she'd carried for years. She pulled it free and swung it upward with all the strength her oxygen-deprived body could muster. The keys raked across the attacker's masked face. He roared, a guttural, animal sound that echoed through the alley. His grip released. Evelyn staggered forward, gasping, her throat on fire. She could taste blood now, real blood. The attacker's or hers, she couldn't tell. She ran. Her feet slipped on the grease-slicked ground. Behind her, she could hear him cursing, hear the sound of him wiping his face. Her silver Subaru was parked 2 blocks away. She dove toward it, fumbling with the door handle. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip it. The engine coughed. She twisted the key again. It caught and held. She didn't look in the mirror, didn't check if he was following. She just drove. Fast. Away. The mahogany desk was so heavy, it took 3 men to move it into the office. That's what Pastor Mark had told her years ago, the first time she'd visited to discuss funeral arrangements for her husband. He'd pointed to it with an odd kind of pride, as if the desk's weight was a measure of his importance. Now Evelyn slammed a printed still frame onto that same desk. The image was slightly blurry, but unmistakable. Mark handing over the envelope. His face, his hands, the exact moment from the video. Explain this, Mark. Tell me you weren't destroying families. Her hands were trembling. Her fingers were splayed on the paper, pressing it down as if the pressure alone could force the truth out of him. Mark sat behind the desk, folding a pair of gold-rimmed spectacles. He was calm, almost mournful. A shaft of red light from the stained glass window cut across his face, turning his expression into something theatrical, something false. He didn't look at the photo. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a blue manila folder. He slid it across the desk toward her. And you explain the $50,000 David hid before he died, Evelyn. Insurance fraud is a federal crime. The words hung in the air between them. Red light, red words, red threat. His voice was whispering now. Menacing. I kept quiet because we were friends. But I have copies of everything. Bank transfers, forged documents, your husband's signature on false claims, all of it. Evelyn's face went pale. She staggered back, her hip hitting the corner of a bookshelf. Dust motes danced in the beam of red light like tiny, mocking observers. The threat was clear. It had always been clear. Silence for silence. Her secret for his. Your dead husband's crime for my live conspiracy. She looked at the folder. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She could feel the weight of it from across the desk. The speedometer needle hovered at 85 mm. Evelyn's hands, knuckles white, gripped the steering wheel of the Subaru so tightly she could feel her pulse in her fingertips. Her jaw was clenched. Her eyes didn't blink. In the rearview mirror, a black SUV with tinted windows loomed close. So close she couldn't see the grille clearly. Just chrome teeth. Just the sense of something large and hungry coming for her. She'd stolen the backup drive from Mark's office, or tried to. He'd seen her go back for it. He'd made a phone call. And now this. The highway stretched ahead in a straight line. Fields on either side. Nowhere to hide. Nowhere to turn. The SUV sideswipes her. Metal screeches against metal. The sound is deafening. Orange sparks shower across her windshield like tiny, violent stars. The Subaru lurches to the right. Evelyn yanks the wheel hard, fighting for control. Her tires scream against the asphalt. A side mirror tears free and flies off into the ditch. She doesn't think. She doesn't plan. She just reacts. Her foot slams on the brakes. The Subaru skids in a 180-degree turn. Black smoke rises from her tires. The smell of burnt rubber fills the car. She guns the engine in reverse, heading for an exit ramp. The SUV overshoots her. Its driver realizes the mistake a second too late. Evelyn accelerates. She's back on the road, heading in the opposite direction now, away from the city, away from the courier hub, away from Mark and whatever he's planning. The SUV is reversing, trying to turn around. But she's already gone. The boathouse was abandoned decades ago. The wood was rotted through in places. The dock had partially collapsed into the water below. Nobody came here. Nobody remembered it existed. Evelyn knelt on the warped floorboards. Her hands were shaking as she worked. She opened the floor cavity, a hiding spot she'd discovered years ago when she and her husband used to come here on rare summer afternoons. Before the cancer, before everything fell apart, she dropped the hard drive into a waterproof Ziploc bag. The plastic sealed with a soft zip-zip sound. She was breathing hard, her lungs still burning from the exertion of the escape. She placed the bag carefully into the cavity and covered it with the loose floorboard. She looked at the spot. There was no way to tell anyone was here. No way to know what lay beneath. The water lapped at the boards underneath her, a steady, hypnotic rhythm. Then her phone vibrated. The iPhone 11 lay on the floor next to her, its screen already cracked from months of courier work. A text message appeared from an unknown number. The files are self-replicating, Evelyn. Check the metadata. She stared at the message. The letters seemed to rearrange themselves in her mind. Self-replicating. That meant the hard drive itself was a trap. Every time she'd opened a file, every time she'd tried to view the video, the encryption had rewritten itself. She'd been so focused on understanding the content that she'd missed the most obvious danger. Someone had been tracking her the entire time. Someone had always known exactly where she was. The library's public computer terminal hummed with the ambient electricity of a dozen machines all running at once. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, that constant, maddening drone that all libraries seem to produce. The sound of concentration, the sound of small desperation. Evelyn had the hard drive plugged into a USB port on one of the terminals. She was using forensic software, something her husband had downloaded years ago for a hobby he'd mentioned but never pursued. The program was ancient. It barely worked, but it was enough. She zoomed into the confession video. Her fingers moved across the trackpad with surgical precision. The frames shifted as she magnified them. A glitch appeared. The video frames shifted slightly out of sync with the audio. She leaned closer. There, and there again. Mark's mouth was saying help, while the audio track said destroy. The timestamp was skipping. The synchronization was completely broken. Someone had edited this footage. Someone had manipulated it. Someone had taken Mark's actual voice and placed it over a different scene. A scene where he was actually saying something else entirely. The entire video was a fake. A frame-up. And Evelyn had been carrying it like a loaded gun, not knowing it was aimed at her own head. The glass door of the library exploded inward. Shards of safety glass hit the floor in a crystalline cascade. Two men in tactical vests burst through the opening. Their movements were practiced. Military. Professional. One held a taser, its prongs glinting in the fluorescent light like tiny metal teeth. Evelyn's body reacted before her mind could process what was happening. She grabbed the nearest heavy object, a metal book cart loaded with 100 encyclopedias, and shoved it with all her strength toward the lead man. He fell back under the weight. Books scattered across the floor like playing cards. She rolled over a desk, her fingers fumbling for purchase on the smooth laminate surface. The second man caught her. He was faster than she expected, stronger. His grip was professional. He slammed her head onto the computer table. Her vision blurred. White noise filled her ears. She felt him rip the hard drive from the USB port. The plastic casing snapped, broke. There was blood on the white keyboard. She wasn't sure if it was hers. The basement was lit by a single hanging bulb that swung in a slow arc, casting rhythmic shadows across the concrete floor. The shadows danced on the walls like something alive, like something watching. Evelyn was zip-tied to a metal folding chair. Her wrists were already turning purple from the pressure. Her forehead had a bruise blooming across it, purple deepening to black at the edges. Pastor Mark stood over her. He was holding the broken hard drive in one hand. His face was twisted into something Evelyn didn't recognize, a mix of rage and genuine fear. His eyes were wide, his breathing was shallow. "Who sent you this, Evelyn? I never said those things on that tape. Someone is trying to kill me, too." His voice was cracked, desperate. The stone-faced priest she'd confronted in his office seemed to have crumbled completely, replaced by something frightened and human. Evelyn spat blood onto the concrete floor. The crimson splash looked almost abstract against the gray, like a work of violent art. "The encryption," she said, her voice raspy from the bruising on her throat. It wasn't just locking the files. It was rewriting them. Every time I opened a layer, it changed the footage. I saw you handing over money, Mark. I heard your voice. But the more I dug, the more I realized none of it was real. Mark's face went even paler. He sat down heavily on the edge of a wooden table. The hard drive hung from his hand like a dead thing. "Then we're both trapped," he whispered. "We're both holding something that can't be unseen." But he was wrong about that, because someone else knew exactly what was on the drive. Someone else had been planning this from the beginning. The basement door creaked open at the top of the stairs. A silhouette in a long gray coat stood backlit by the stairwell light. The figure was motionless for a moment, just watching, just calculating. Then an arm rose, a silencer-equipped pistol, Glock 17, professional. Two soft metallic sounds, fut, fut. Mark's eyes went wide. He looked down at his chest. His white clerical shirt was blooming red. He tried to stand. His legs didn't obey. He collapsed. His body hit the concrete floor with a sickening thud. The hitman descended the stairs in slow, deliberate steps. The footsteps echoed through the basement. The coat swayed with each step, gray fabric moving like water. The figure kicked the chair over. Evelyn hit the ground sideways, still zip-tied. The impact drove the wind from her lungs. She gasped, struggled. The plastic bit deeper into her wrists. The hitman produced a gallon canister of gasoline. He began to pour it methodically around her. The liquid spread across the concrete. The smell was overwhelming, acrid and thick and absolutely final. Books from nearby shelves were soaked. Old hymnals, prayer books, forgotten literature, all of it saturated with fuel. The smell was so strong Evelyn could barely breathe. The hitman dropped a silver Zippo lighter onto the floor near her. It glinted in the hanging bulb's light. Then he turned and ascended the stairs. The basement door closed. Silence. The smell of gasoline. The weight of fate closing in like a fist. Evelyn's fingers, slick with sweat and gasoline, fumbled behind her back. The zip ties had cut off most of the circulation to her hands. She could barely feel them, but she could still move. She reached into the hidden pocket of her courier vest, the pocket where she kept her delivery shears. Small, sharp, exactly what she needed. The roar of flames was beginning now. Around her, the books were catching fire. The gasoline ignited with a sudden, violent whoosh. Orange light bloomed across the basement walls. The heat became immediately intense. Terrible. She cut. The shears bit through the plastic zip tie on her left wrist. The restraint snapped. Her arm was free. The flames were spreading, racing across the floor toward her. Mark's body was engulfed now. She didn't look at him. There was nothing she could do. Nothing anyone could do. She cut the restraint on her right wrist. Free. Both arms free, rolling, forward, toward the coal chute window at the far end of the basement. The window that nobody had opened in decades. Her jacket caught fire as she rolled through a wall of flame. The fabric was suddenly hot, smoldering. She kicked at the coal chute window. Once, twice. Glass shattered, exploded outward. Fresh air poured in. Cold, clean, perfect air. She squeezed through. Her shoulders scraped the frame. Her jacket was still partially on fire. She pulled it off and threw it aside. It lay smoking on the wet ground. Outside, she gasped. The cold hit her like a physical force. Snow was falling. She could see it now, falling in fat flakes from a black sky. Above her, flames were shooting out of the basement window. The church basement burning. Mark burning. Everything burning. She was alive. The courier hub was a sprawling facility on the edge of the industrial district. A massive sorting warehouse with conveyor belts and fluorescent lights and the constant hum of automated machines. It was where Evelyn had worked for 7 years, where she'd built a life of quiet routine and simple paychecks. Dawn was breaking as she limped through the front entrance. Her clothes were singed, her skin was covered in soot and blood. She looked like something that had crawled out of hell, which, technically, was accurate. Miller was in the back office, the hub manager, a man in his 50s with thinning hair and a nervous habit of adjusting his glasses. He was standing by the massive sorting machine, the one that could process 5,000 parcels an hour, and he was feeding delivery logs into an industrial shredder. The sound of the shredder was a mechanical whine, the sound of evidence being destroyed. He saw Evelyn and froze. His hand, holding a stack of logs, hovered halfway to the shredder's feed slot. Miller. Her voice was different now. Stripped down, cold. The voice of someone who had burned and survived. The voice of someone who had nothing left to lose. He backed away. Behind him, on the desk, lay a backup drive. Identical to the one that had started everything. Identical to the one that had been addressed to her house. The delivery address was a mistake. Evelyn said, stepping into the light. She was holding her phone, recording. You sent it to your own courier. I never miss a drop. Miller's face crumbled. The realization hit him in stages. First confusion, then understanding, then absolute defeat. He lunged for her. His foot caught on a heavy parcel near the floor. He stumbled, fell. His body sprawled across the concrete like a man who had already lost. Outside, the blue and red lights of police sirens began to pulse against the warehouse windows. The sirens grew louder. The lights flashed in rhythmic, hypnotic pulses. Evelyn stood there, soot-covered and barely breathing, and waited. The porch of her house looked exactly the way it had when she'd left it. The gray-painted slats, the wooden bench, the place where a simple delivery had upended her entire life. The morning was crisp, cold. The sky was a clear, pale blue, the kind of blue that only comes after a storm has passed. Evelyn stood there, holding the blue manila folder, the one Mark had given her in his office, the one containing evidence of her husband's insurance fraud, the one that could destroy her completely if it ever reached the authorities. She picked up a small silver lighter from the porch table. She brought the corner of the folder to the flame. The paper caught, blackened, curled. The blue cover melted. The white pages inside turned brown, gray, then ash. She watched it burn. She didn't think about her husband. She didn't think about what she was destroying. She just held the lighter steady and let the heat do its work. When there was nothing left but ash and charred fragments, she dropped the remains into a metal trash can. She stood there for a moment, watching the embers glow. Then she turned away. She picked up a new delivery bag from the porch, the canvas courier bag, the one that held her job, her identity, the thing that had brought the hard drive to her in the first place. She looked at the brass house numbers, 425 Sycamore Sound. She wiped them clean with her thumb. The metal caught the morning light. The birds were singing now. The neighborhood was waking up. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Somewhere else, a car door slammed. The world was moving on. The world had never stopped moving, even while everything else was burning. She picked up her courier bag. She stepped off the porch, and she walked